Welcome back to our conversation about the Age of Discovery. So we talked in the last video about how the Spanish and the Portuguese and the French and the Dutch, were heading to the ocean. So now we talked about trading empires, and those existed mostly in Asia. And now we're going to look at the colonial empires that Spain and then eventually England set up in the Americas. So we're going to most of our time spend talking about Spain. Alrighty. Okay, so you know him, Christopher Columbus. I'm going to call him the man who started it all. And so when we looked at the map, right, if you recall, the Portuguese had been sailing around. They had found India, right? So they'd gone around Africa. Well, the Spanish, right, they've got to look for another way. So this is where Christopher Columbus comes in, who is originally from Genoa, Italy. And so he goes to the Spanish court. Here's a painting from the 1850s, of course, so a romantic view of Columbus meeting with Ferdinand and Isabella, the Spanish monarchs. And he says, look, I've got a new proposition, right? I'm going to sail west to go to India. So I don't know where, but somewhere we were taught that Christopher Columbus was trying to prove the world was round. Most educated Europeans at this time knew the earth was round. That's why he set sail west. He figured if he kept going along this route, he would eventually, right, hit India. Of course, you and I know there were two continents in the middle of that way. So he heads this way, and the first place he lands is what many believe is the Bahamas. And he starts to call those islands there the East Indies. Notice the name, right? The people he meets there he calls Indians, because he is convinced that he has landed in India. So he goes back a year later to Spain, right? Let's pretend that's what he's doing here, telling the king and queen that he has found this unbelievable place. He's reached India. There's all these treasures to be had. And so he goes the second time, this time, note, with 1,000 soldiers. So he transfers from being just the explorer to the conqueror, and thus begins the Spanish Empire in America. All told, I believe Columbus will go probably 3 or 4 times altogether, and so he'll bounce around here, the Caribbean, and then I think at one point he lands in Central America. Okay, so this is an interesting map. So remember 1492 is when he heads out and lands in the Americas. But by 1507, right, it's clear that this is not Asia. So this is one of the first maps that identifies the New World, and it is named by this German map maker. I'll let you German speakers pronounce his name. But he gives this name after the Italian explorer, right, Amerigo Vespucci, he's the one who said, I don't think this is Asia, right? I think it's the New World. And so that's why it's called America rather than Columbia. So notice I like looking at old maps. So see how accurate, right, by 1507, if you recall our map from 1901, right, that they didn't have a lot of correct information, but you can see their knowledge is becoming more concrete. So obviously they have no idea about the size of North and South America, but look how much the world has changed. Okay, so the Spanish Empire in America. So we had our explorers, now we have the conquistadores. So these are two names you must know, Hernando Cortez and Francisco Pizarro. So what motivates Spain to fund these expensive ventures? Well, to establish colonies, right? And of course, to become wealthy, the gold. So let's start with Hernando Cortez. There he is. He lands in Mexico with 600 men. But notice the years there. By 1521, the Aztecs are defeated. Now you remember, I'm sure, the Aztecs, right? Here's their capital city, Tenochtitlan, which is today Mexico City. So it was an amazing empire. And you hopefully remember all about their achievements and the size. So how do they do this with only 600 men? Obviously, you know this lesson, better weapons, right? They come with cannons. I think the Aztecs called them iron horses. They weren't sure what they were. Also, they had the help of other native people in the area who had uh, resented the Aztecs for being ruled by them. Hernan Cortez had a translator, Malinke, who helped, or excuse me, I think I pronounced that wrong, Malinche. She helped Cortez translate, and that's where they found out, the Spanish realized that native people weren't real keen on the Aztecs. So they helped the Spanish, plus, and I put it in capital letters, so make sure we write this down, smallpox. Smallpox is the #1 killer of the native populations in South America. Yes, the Spanish had the better weapons, and yes, they had other native people helping him out, but it is this disease which will just decimate the population. So his cousin, coincidentally, this man, Francisco Pizarro, by 1532, so, you know, Cortez and the other Spanish have moved out through Mexico, but so within 10 years, Pizarro then lands in South America with 200 men, and within 1 year he takes the Incan capital of Cusco. How? Well, essentially they set up an ambush. By this point, I think word has spread, right? Atahualpa, the king of the Incas, goes to meet with the Spanish, and he's prepared to offer many treasures, and he comes with 30,000 men. But Pizarro, they lie in wait, and they ambush him and just decimate him, capture Atahualpa, and Atahualpa says, I will give you rooms full of silver and gold. And the Spanish strangle him. And after that, the Incas are just sort of defeated mentally. And then so it becomes quick work for the Spanish to take over the Incan Empire. Also, don't forget this, right? Smallpox has started to spread as well. So there you have it, right? It's not going well for the native people. So the Spanish Empire sets up a pattern of conquest, and they learned this from the Reconquista, if you recall from last year, when Ferdinand and Isabella reconquered Spain from the Muslims, right, who had been there for, I don't know, centuries. So the two things I want you to remember of the Spanish Empire is, one, they imposed the Spanish culture on the native people. They forced the people to learn the language, right, and to adopt the strict social class that existed in Spain. So these are names, you need to know this, all of these people and the classes. So you had the Peninsulares, right? They were born in Spain who would come over to rule temporarily in the Americas. The Creoles, right? These are people born in New Spain, i.e., Mexico, South America, of Spanish parents. So their parents are Europeans, but they were born in the Americas. Right away, part of this conquering the people, a lot of the Native American women, right, and the Spanish would, I don't know, dare I say, well, no, I'll think of something academic, right? Engage in a sexual relationship. And so the children born of this between a European descendant and a Native American parents are called the mestizos. Then you would have the Native American Indians. And then, of course, we'll talk about this soon, the enslaved people brought over from Africa. So this is a strict social hierarchy that will exist for centuries in Latin America. And the second way that they sort of controlled Latin America is through the encomienda system, which is essentially the feudal system brought over to the Americas. So the native population here farmed, mined, etc. for the Spanish landlords, right? So these peninsulares come over and take large swaths of land from the people and then make the people work the land for them. And so over time, this is what will essentially kind of conquer the population, the native population, and make them Spaniards. So take a look at this map here, right? So here the Spanish come here with Cortez, right, through Mexico and the islands. Soon, right, Pizarro comes here through the Incas, and they expand slowly over the decades. And by the 1540s, look how much, they're into North America, right? So the Spanish, sometimes we forget, were the first people in our country, right, before the English. So you can start to see how massive the Spanish Empire becomes, and it will make Spain one of the most powerful nations throughout the 1500s. And something else that the Spanish brought that helped convert the native people to Spanish culture and way of thinking is, of course, the Catholic Church, right? So when these colonies are established, after those empires become sort of stabilized, then come the missionaries, the Jesuits, and we'll talk more about who these men are later, but these are a particular order of priests and monks who come with the explorers and the conquistadors and bring the Christianity to the people, but with that, right, they're speaking Spanish and dressing like Spaniards and all that good stuff. Okay, so what's the relationship like between the Spanish and the Native Americans? I'm sure it's no surprise to know it was not well, right? It's not a good relationship. Obviously, the population is being decimated by the smallpox. You can see this is a picture of early mining, right? They put them to work under extremely harsh conditions, not only in the fields, but in the mines. But here come the Catholic priests, right? The Jesuits, and they're always in these black robes. And the Jesuits, though, while they were converting people to Catholicism, they also helped try to stick up for the treatment of the native population, and oftentimes got in trouble with the Spanish for sticking up for them. And sometimes the missions that they established became safe havens from the harsh treatments in the mines and in the fields. But of course, as you can imagine, no one takes the taking of their property lightly. You would fight back, of course, if someone were to come and take over your house tonight and make you work in the house. So people fought back as well. And one kind of famous rebellion is this man. It looks like Pope, but I don't know. Maybe if I know my Spanish, Pope, I'm not sure. But this is a statue in the Capitol, the United States Capitol, and he led, see how early that is, right? 1680, a rebellion of native people against the Spanish in what is today New Mexico. So this is one example of rebellion of people against the Spanish. We'll talk later on, as the African populations come over, there will be several of those rebellions throughout the history as early as 1680, but all the way into the 1800s. So the Spanish now have set into Latin America, what is today Latin America. So you can see, if we go back to this map, right? So this is their Spanish Empire, and they will hold much of this territory, at least from here all the way down until the 1800s. So we're looking at 300 years of colonial Spanish rule. Okay, stay tuned for our next adventure. But wait, there's more. I forgot. I should mention Brazil. I know a lot of you are like, wait a minute, Miss Banker. There's a whole country there that doesn't speak Spanish. That's right. No disrespect to the Brazilians or the Portuguese. So in 1500, so notice that's just after Columbus, but before Cortez, Pedro Alvarez Cabral landed in off the coast of what is today Brazil in the 1500s and claimed this land for the Portuguese. So remember, we talked about the Treaty of Tordesillas. This is where you can see that the Spanish and the Portuguese come up against each other quite a bit in South America. So that's why the Pope had to draw that line. So this is territory in 1700. So you notice here, right, more other European countries have come into South America by then. So anyway, no disrespect. Okay, seriously, I'm done.